Barrington,
Yes.
McCardle,
Here.
Dosher, Rice,
Here.
Savers.
Okay, we have a quorum. Approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion to begin formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove? Discussion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen,
Second.
second by Mr. Rice.
Just comment, I'm, for the parks, glad to see somebody's paying for broken glass that they broke at a hockey game. With 20-plus years I've been involved, I've never heard of a away team volunteering to pay for glass that broke during a game. So that's good to see.
Might want to invite them back.
Further discussion. Anybody in the audience wish to address these? Roll call.
Savers,
You.
Yeah. Aye.
Rice,
Aye.
Dosher, McCardle,
Aye.
Barrington,
Aye.
Allen,
Aye.
Charts. Smith.
Motion carries. Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of city council on an item that is not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time. I want to start out by wishing Ms. Elwine a happy birthday. Today is her birthday.
Happy birthday. Tracy. No.
Come on up, Mr. Bender.
What's happening, fellas? So I know I'm not the only one that watches the news. Fox News is the most popular news station. We shouldn't watch it. They all lie to us. But as of today, who here wants to recommend that I get vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine and subsequent boosters? Anybody? Okay. Good, perfect answer. Old media, legacy media, most of our federal institutions like the FBI, CIA, even things like Department of Education, they all need to die suddenly. A newly popularized term. It's been echoed in obituaries around Mitchell. I watch alternative media, new media, real news, not fake news. Those are not new terms, just repopularized or regurgitated for our current times. Myocarditis. Now, I've been hearing that term since the vaccine rollout. That's heart inflammation, hurting, and killing mostly, but not limited to, young men. One of many verified adverse reactions to the COVID vaccine. Blood clots, heart attacks, neurological problems, miscarriage, increased fetal demise, death rates of all kinds skyrocketing. Stiff person disease. Now, that's a new one. Pfizer's own document lists it as a very rare adverse reaction. Celine Dion all of a sudden has stiff person disease. You know what that is? You just stiffen up and tip over. No joke. Kind of funny. But what's the truth? None of you know. None of you know anything about it. I know the truth. No, I'm just kidding. I just live by common sense. I don't mask a whole population, obviously, and shut down the whole world. I don't take new, unproven medical technology with unknown substances and inject myself, and I would say like a brain-dead junkie, but since 80% of the people got it, and most of them, of course, I don't want to alienate myself from that many people. Not tonight. New study I saw said 1 in 800 people have a severe reaction. That's hospitalization. Now, that's only about 15 to 20 people in Mitchell, but I still hope that's not true. Now, who should I complain to this week, Bob? Maybe that weaselly little Dusty Johnson, the guy with the sanctimonious little smirk. Weak men create tough times. But maybe I should complain to my online community. Personally, I just want to know the truth. I'd like to see a Ron Johnson-style roundtable here in our community with our doctors from this community to tell me that all my information is wrong. Maybe the mortician will say he hasn't seen weird white fibrous clots. Maybe the nurses aren't seeing more fetal demises, stillbirths, and miscarriages. Maybe it's all fake and the doctors aren't seeing more blood clot strokes, heart attacks, and neurological issues in unusually young people. Most of all, I want my favorite doctor to tell me that my aunt didn't die from the vaccine. Even though she worked for him for 40 years, took the first jab, then he told her not to get the second jab because of such a bad reaction from the first jab. Her MS symptoms unexplainably exacerbated, and he watched her struggle and eventually die from COVID complications, and Avera's best solution was to make her comfortable without consent. Now, at this point, you got to prove to me that it wasn't the vaccine. I just want to know the truth, but all I see is 80% plus of people putting their heads in the sand. Did you guys hear that Rod Stewart's 11-year-old son just had a heart attack? Nuts. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Okay. Action to approve the 2021 International Fire Code. Mr. Sandoval or Mr. Larson, who's going to speak to this?
I believe the fire marshal will speak to this. Be nice to him.
He gets up here, all bets are off.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I am Shannon Sandoval, Fire Marshal, and we're here to talk about the 2021 International Fire Code. If you've not read this entire document that was handed out to you, that's okay.
If you did, I question your sanity.
It took me the better part, we've been talking about this for a long time. The previous edition was in 2018, now we're in the 2021. Obviously, we're a little behind, but these things take time. There are a lot of changes, and so just briefly, I want to talk about some of the key changes, and then we can have a discussion about that. So, most of what is being proposed in new code are building and design features, not necessarily changes to how builders and trade people do their day-to-day operations. And then most, I guess, most notoriously, special occupancies and how they're doing things. One of those being medical cannabis, another being special like puzzle rooms, escape rooms, those types of things. So we're just going to talk quickly about a few of those. Now, most of what is we currently do for my inspection purposes. So when we go in and do a building inspection, we're looking for things that cause imminent fire safety, hazards, extension cords, those types of things. For instance, with the medical cannabis coming, we're going to be doing a thing called extraction. Some of that equipment's not UL listed, or it's not tested in a way in which they are safe. The new code speaks to that. Moving on from cannabis to puzzle rooms, those are the things that people are going into, try to get out, those kinds of things. We haven't had a major case in the U.S., but there have been several documented cases about fires in these places because they don't have egress to get in and out, smoke detection, so on and so forth. Another key feature are maintaining your business. So that would be drywall that's coming apart, heavy timber, basically things within which fire would spread if left alone, not fixed, so on and so forth. And then another big change would be hotel rooms. We have a lot of construction going on. We've been talking about adding new apartments in those types of places, requiring that if it's above 20 rooms, we now have to have a sprinkler system in there. So I just went through some things that are real brief, real quickly. I hope that you have some questions for me. Again, mainly these are design features, safety issues, but it would not require us, we as the city, to, in my opinion, to make any major changes to how we do things on a day-to-day basis. Questions for me?
So I remember a while back when Marius was in your position, and he had started doing some outreach and doing some training and education programs, making sure that apartment owners and I'm trying to think of a good word for it. People who own properties that they rent to college students were
Yes.
making sure that there were appropriate escapes for all of the rooms that were being rented out. How is that process going, and is that continuing on, and are you seeing compliance?
Yeah, so that is still something that we do. So those are called R2 inspections. Any person who owns an apartment rental that has 2 or more apartments is required by us and by myself to have an inspection done every year. We still do those. I do an inspection every month, so I send out a letter to somebody, whoever would own that building, stating I would come. The long and short of it, Susan, is that we're still doing that. The issue that we have is sometimes those buildings change hands so much. What I'm doing now is I'm just walking into these places. And so what we're looking for are, do they have 2 means of egress? Fire extinguishers and smoke detectors in the hallway. Those are probably the biggest things. So yes, and I keep track of those every year. And so at the end of the year, I send them to Chief Larson, and so we have those numbers if we do want to see them.
Is there any way to figure out how many people are paying rent to the landlord? I mean, like I remember that one situation where there was a person who was renting like a small room that didn't have a window and they were caught in a fire. But nobody, I mean, he shouldn't have been renting that space, right?
Sure. So I think and I'm not sure about that specific case. Unfortunately, what I have run into, I do not know how to track that. I've gone to the county I don't remember how we did this, but to basically find out who was owning buildings. And a lot of those companies were LLCs, didn't have a name, out of state. So no, unless I get a call from a citizen saying, hey, I don't know if the building I'm in is safe, would you mind coming and taking a look at it? I don't know, unfortunately. And so there are probably places that are falling under the cracks. With that being said, we have not had an issue lately with anything like that. So,
And I don't know if Marius was like doing training at the college for the college students, which was that part of what you were doing, like making them aware of what their rights are as a renter.
right. And unfortunately, with not picking on Mitchell Tech, but with COVID, we have not been back in the building. Where Mike and Marius were both going in and giving a talk essentially at the first of the year, telling kids, what to expect. Hey, you're new in town. Here's what the services we provide. A lot of the special interest groups that we see now would be like LifeQuest, maybe some independent living, or people that might have some kind of a disability. Those landlords have been reaching out to us, and we've actually partnered with the Vera Queen of Peace to go in and talk to some of these people about not only fire safety, but if they have a fall or they need handrails in the shower, just accessible means. The Vera Queen of Peace has been working with us, so that's been great. You bet. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, you talked about building and design feature things, so is that going to spill over into our building permit things? Or
No,
is that?
no, and that's a good question, Steve. So currently, this would not affect, again, it would not affect our inspections, the building permits. I talked to John Hegg today, and I thought that he might be here. But currently, this would just, I'm trying to think of a better way to put this. This just gives me more teeth when it comes to our building inspections, because most of the time when I walk into a building, people that own those buildings are aware of fire hazard and code. The problem is if it comes to something like, hey, my roof is leaking, how much time can you give me? It's just how far we've let things degrade before I actually see them. So it just gives me a little bit of added weight if I do have to report something to Justin.
It's not that they changed some basic design principle or
Correct.
anything else?
No, so
More on the enforcement side then?
correct. So, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but structures that are classified as certain hazards, if they're over a certain square footage, they require a sprinkler system. If they're over a certain occupant load,
And those
those are
stayed the same?
all stay the same. Yep.
Anything else? Okay, entertain a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Church, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to award bid for rock salt project 2023-27 off state of South Dakota bid contract, number 17706 with Blackstrap Inc. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. The state of South Dakota accepted these bids on July 13th of 2022. The low bidder for the Mitchell-Salem area was Blackstrap Inc. at a price per ton of $72.90. We're estimated that we'll buy 625 tons this year at a total cost of $45,562.50. The bid was attached for your information. We do recommend accepting the state's bid contract with Blackstrap at a price per ton of $72.90 per ton.
Is that about what we pay every year in that ballpark? or-
So if you look on there, in 2019, we paid $78.58, and then in 2020, we had a big deduction. We went to $70.90, and then we renewed that price for '21. And they were saying just because of gas prices, they could not honor that $70.90. So for $2 more a ton, we just went with the state bid. Made most sense.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve amendment number 1 to Agreement A 2021-56 East Spruce Street Project with Bros Engineering. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. The city entered an agreement with Bros Engineering on October 18th of 2021 to complete the design and bidding for the East Spruce Street street extension, crossing the railroad tracks to approximately the west driveway of MTI. The additional work includes some additional topo they needed to do, working with BNSF Railroad with their permitting process. And as part of this amendment, we're also requesting that council authorizes the professional engineering construction services. We do plan on having this project completed in 2023. The increase in the design and bidding fees was $12,005, and the increase in construction engineering was $18,405. For our new contract amounts, design and bidding at $61,985, construction engineering at $107,150. And we do recommend approval. With that, I can answer any questions.
What happens to the trains while they're working on this? I mean, where do they?
So we're actually required to provide flaggers for the trains. So the people who are working on the tracks know when the trains are coming. Traffic will be diverted. So essentially, the trains don't stop. They come and the work stops for them.
And then people will be diverted and have to go around the back
Yep.
way.
Yep. We plan to have it completed before MTC is in session. There's a lot of coordination with this project with BNSF, as well as, I believe, Northern Natural Gas. I believe they have roughly $2 million to spend to reroute some of their facilities. So it's been a big undertaking.
So how long is the overall process do they expect it to take?
The construction itself should not take that long. We're looking at roughly a block and a half of actual road construction. It's just, there's a lot of sequencing and a lot of special items in this project.
So they'll start after MTC gets out in the spring and hopefully finish long before?
Yep.
Okay, great.
This will be a situation where we allow completion dates in '23 and '24, just to allow flexibility and better pricing.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen. Second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Agreement A 2022-55, review and update the city's classification compensation system with Condrey and Associates. Ms. Elwine.
Mayor and council, included in the packet was an agreement with Condrey and Associates that would allow us to review and update the city's compensation and classification system. The city went through this process back in 2016 with an implementation of January 1st, 2017, so it's now 7 years old. What they will be looking at is they'll be looking at any changes to the positions within the last 7 years. They'll also look at our promotions policy, any market adjustments that have happened. We've seen cities do some mid-year adjustments in the past couple of years. That would be factored in. They will also be looking at specific positions and duties that are brought up from staff that they believe might not have been considered at the first review. This process will include an appeals procedure, just like our original one did. The plan now is we have this budgeted for '23. We're asking you to approve it now so we can start that process right away in January. The timeline would have this process completed by the end of March so that we can take that information and use it with our negotiations for 2024 wages with our 3 unions. And if you have any questions, I can certainly answer them. We did discuss this as part of the union negotiations as well, and we recommend approval of the agreement.
I'll move approval of the action. I don't have to read the whole thing. I'll move approval.
Motion by Mrs.
I'll
Starks,
second.
second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-78, plat of Lot 1 of D. Odegaard's First Edition. Mr. Jenigus.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. This follows along the master plan out there. It's the corner lot down on the southeast corner there. There's no concerns from from Public Works at all with this.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-79, plat of lots 1A and 1AB, a subdivision of Lot 1A of the Prairie View subdivision. Mr. Jenigus.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 5-0 2 absent. You know this as the Morgan Thieler and the Dice Building. Morgan Thieler has been renting it for the past 10-ish years. The north side, they're now purchasing the north side. They're putting together a master deed that has 3 exhibits with it. I only have the first exhibit with it, but this is for the site plan. They also have one for the first floor and the basement. It shows all the different easements that they have with them for the 2 different buildings, for the garbage, the signage, the utilities, the air conditioning, the parking. All of that is all covered in that master deed that will be filed at the same time that the plat is filed. There's Mr. Peterson's here if you have any questions for him or if he needs to explain anything further, or I can answer any questions as well.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? Mr. Peterson, you're awful quiet back there.
Mark does a way better job.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-80, plat of Lot 12 and Track I, Wild Oak Golf Club Edition.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 5-0 with 2 absent. It follows along their master plan out there. Public Works has no issues. I believe it's another lot for MTC out there.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience want to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-81, annexation of Lot 14 of Fiala's addition of the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 4, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Primary, County, South Dakota. Mr. Jenigus.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is Robert and Sherry Porter's land. We did a variance for this piece of property at last Board of Adjustment hearing for oversized garage. They're looking to build on that lot and annex it in so that they can receive city services from it.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Approval of Resolution R 2022-82, contingency transfer for fiscal year 2022 annual budget. Ms. Elwine.
Mayor and Council, included in your packet is a long list of contingency transfers. It's changed quite a bit from what I told you at the last meeting. I think at the last meeting I reported that I didn't think we'd be using much of the fund. If you look now, this contingency resolution would be spending transferring $830,653 of the total $844,764 contingency budget. I can certainly run through each of these real quickly. The first one, the municipal league dues, that was one that was just left off of the budget. It was an error that was made. That is something that we pay annually. Administrative boards, that's to cover the addition of the new position. We've got the attorney's office, that's just for some outside legal consult fees that came in. I'm trying to get my thing to come over, hold on. Municipal buildings, we had utilities that went up a little bit, and then we also have the ADA repair to the front doors. We had to replace that, and instead of just replacing what we had, we put in ADA accessible doors for both the outside and the inside. You're going to see a lot of gas, oil, and tires on there. That's because those prices went up after budget was done. Those were unanticipated, but we have been following those throughout the year. If you look at your traffic budget, again, gas, oil, and tires, utilities, both of those are uncontrollables. We did have some additional repairs that we're doing contingency for. Fire, same thing with gas, oil, and telephone and utilities. The buildings, we had windows that were leaking in the public safety building that we had to replace. Gas, again, for the street department. Public works admin, this would be for nuisance abatements. Some of those costs we get additional revenue in from. So if it was, for example, lawn mowing or snow removal, we get revenue in, but we don't have the budget to spend what we're spending out. So it would be paying those costs. We also have for the settlement agreement that the City Council approved at the last meeting. Animal control, again, gas, oil, tires, utilities. Library, we had a mechanical repair that had to be made in the library. So we had to have that one done. It's a control unit, and the mayor would probably have a better description than I did on that one.
Controls.
Yep, and then the utilities as well. These community projects, both of these debt service are just due to the budget going up, and instead of doing a supplemental appropriation for $50, we just added them as contingency items. The last one is all, these are all transfers of cash out of general fund into other funds. So we're supplementing our transfer out budget in the following ways. Transfer out to park, we're adding an additional $397,000 of cash beyond what was budgeted for 2022. You can see the items I have listed there. We had an outdoor pool repair. We had utilities at the recreation and aquatics. We had utilities, I have that listed twice, sorry. Fuel at the sports complex. We had the professional services for the indoor pool. Originally, I thought we'd have the budget to do that right out of park, but we didn't. So if we get reimbursement for that, we will deposit that back into the general fund. We had a repair of the ceiling. That some of that is new news or new information to us. We know that that's going to be an additional cost on next year's project, so we're adding that in now. And then council had authorized $150,000 going to the Cadwell press box project. So that you will also see later in the meeting as a supplemental appropriation, and the ones that say they're relying on transfers from contingency for the cash, that's where that's coming from, is out of this budget transfer here. Transfer out to Corn Palace, that's just, we are not sure that they are going to have enough cash on hand at the end of the year, so we would be transferring cash because you cannot have a fund go negative. So that would be for that one. Airport, we think it's actually going to be okay because they did have additional cash come in. Airport, we think it's actually going to be okay because they did have additional cash come in, but we have $50,000 there in case we need to transfer it out at the end of the year. If that fund and the Corn Palace and EMS, for that matter, are okay at the end of the year, we won't do those cash transfers. We'll only do it if the fund goes negative. Park is a whole nother ballgame because we have so many open capital projects that we're in the middle of. We're going to transfer that cash either way because they're going to spend that next year when they reappropriate their capital projects that won't get completed in 2022. EMS, again, I don't think we're going to need this cash as well. Their fund should be okay, but just in case something crazy happened at the end of the year, we did see an uptick in some of our revenue collections that we thought were missing for a couple months. So that actually looks like we've added cash in there into the fund compared to budget. So I think that one will be okay too. So if we have that $50,000 to airport and to EMS, If we don't need it, we won't transfer it, and the same with Corn Palace. If we don't need that one, we won't transfer it, and it'll be left in contingency. Now, there was a whole lot of other things, of budget items that went over, but the rest of those are being accommodated or being absorbed in that health insurance line that we didn't pay out. And I think when you saw the sales tax report that was in the budget this year, or in the packet this month, we have already hit our sales tax budget for the year. So I still think that there's probably going to be excess revenue compared to expenses when we look at the end of the year when we finally close this year out. And there might be additional funds that could be appropriated to next year. So we also, if we had a departmental budget that we knew, even though they have budget left, but they're going to need that because part of the project's being moved to next year, we didn't count on that one either, so that we knew we'd have enough next year. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Could you just reiterate again on the pool, which ones do we kind of expect that we might get all or part of the funds?
Just the
back?
27,000.
Just the 20. What's going on with the roof?
That is in the old indoor pool, where when they removed the roof and they found that rust and the other deterioration, they have to do some repair work to that to make sure it's structurally sound.
When they took out, there was a hard ceiling in there. When they took it out, there was a lot of corrosion that had taken place up there above it on the structure. So they came in and looked at it, and it needs to be sandblasted and painted.
And I guess my thought is 150 is probably on the high end of estimates. It could come in less than that, but there's a lot of projects that we have going on in Park and Rec right now, so I'm assuming one of these other projects that are rolling to next year are probably going to come in over. So either way, I think it's going to be consumed in one of the projects. So after that good news, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
That project at the old pool has been fascinating to watch.
What we thought would be a $200,000 project, I think we added the other day was close to 800 now? Yeah, so. But we need to get that one done.
Mr. Schrader.
What is the plan for the use of that again, Kevin?
It will be an exercise area.
Bikes, treadmills, and those guys.
Correct.
Okay, entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of Resolution 2022-82.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Charks,
Second.
second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-83 West End Bridge Preservation Big Grant. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. This request is for approval to submit a South Dakota Bridge Preservation Improvement Grant, or a big grant, for the West End Bridge that is over Firestill Creek on West Harmon. The improvements would include a 2-coat polymer chip seal, rust remediation at weld locations on the bridge, and sidewalk railings, and other associated improvements. Total project cost is estimated at $317,255.68, with an additional $53,200 for construction engineering cost. City's commitment would be 20%, or $74,091.14. If approved, this would come to us in April. Bros would not start the design until 2024 because we do not have this in the 23 budget. The bridge is in good condition. This is just general maintenance. It's time to do this. So with that, I do recommend approval of the resolution and for the mayor to sign.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience want to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second read on ordinance O 2022-19 supplemental appropriations. Ms. Elway?
I do need to review this because there have been changes from the first review of the appropriation ordinance. First of all, we just had a typo on this. We were missing one of the ones, so that one's just administrative. A couple other items that have come up, the programming services, there was additional expense out of here that we weren't aware of, so we had to add that in. The revenue is already in the fund to support it. So before you saw $8,500, we had to add another, whatever that difference would be, $6,000. Thank you, I need Excel in front of me. These other two items, the utilities and the capital equipment, as well as professional services, all these items that you see here that were added are actually now being supported by contingency transfer. So that is why we had to do a transfer of cash, is to cover these other expenses. The 46, everything but the 46,000. This 46,000 was for equipment that, no, excuse me, this one, 27,000 was equipment that was purchased out of funds that the rec center received from LifeQuest. So that one did not require contingency support, but the rest did. You'll see gas and fuel. What else changed here? This one is really not an impact to general fund at all. We collect revenue into this library fines fund. It comes from when they make copies and other things like that. The library board of trustees had authorized some purchases that were above what the budget was, so we had to increase that to cover the purchases for the year. And that was really just a miscommunication. I think we didn't realize that that was also a budgeted item, so they'll have that corrected for future budgets. And I can answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, there's no additional changes from the previous meeting.
Questions, comments, motions?
Move to approve second reading of 2219.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion to adopt.
So,
Motion by Mrs. Charks,
Second.
Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address? Roll call, please.
Dosher. McCardle. Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
aye.
Parks.
Aye.
Smith. Savers. Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries. Merry Christmas, we're adjourned.